Hello, Kristi. Welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so very much looking forward to this conversation. And as I told you, I'm still looking right now because I can see just your last name, Ferguson, really stood out to me. And I just think how incredible it is that that was my mom's maiden name and my grandpa who passed. It's been 3 years now, I believe. So yeah, I just feel like there's already a connection, and I'm just really excited to get this conversation started.
Yes, me too. I love connections like that. It's like, oh, it feels like this is meant to be. So we're really excited to have you. And I love what you're doing for teens and families. So, Kristi, can you kind of tell our audience what it is that you do and how you got started into it?
Yeah, so I'll try to make it short and sweet as I possibly can. But in the year 2020, I became a mom for the first time. And after the birth of my son Hendrix, I started to recognize and I had more awareness about the things in my life that were no longer serving me. A lot of toxic patterns and dependencies, alcohol and drugs, for example, and yeah, becoming a mom just truly made me want to be the best version of myself I could possibly be, first and foremost for myself, but then also for my children. I do have a daughter also now. So in that second pregnancy is actually when I had a mental health breakdown. I was still kind of trying to work through my own self-discovery journey. And yeah, I've been sober now for close to 2 years. And through this entire process and this entire journey, I really just started to discover more about myself and more of the things that really truly light me up and bring me so much joy. And one of those things is working with teens. So when I really started to think about, how I had gotten to the place that I was pre-children, I started to recognize that a lot of that was really a lot of it was cultivated like in my teen years, like all of those patterns that I had created for myself and all of those habits that were no longer serving me, as I said. So I started to think how incredible and how life changing it could have been to have somebody there to support me through those years, those complex years that we know are yeah, can be very, very difficult for a lot of teens, right? And not even just with academics. I just mean like growing as a person and trying to figure out and discover who you truly are without all of the noise around you and what everybody else is doing. Because I feel like it constantly is a game of comparison. And yeah, so I just wanted to be that person for teens to help them not only with their academics, but also truly to help them to feel their absolute best body, mind, and soul, and just know that their potential is limitless and they really truly can achieve anything in their lives. And I also am just so passionate about helping them find that confidence that is so deeply rooted within us all.
That's awesome. I love that. And I feel like the best people to help in that realm are ones that have kind of been there, right? Like you can use your experience to then help catapult these teens into, hey, here's confidence, here's these skills you can build, you can do it, here's your potential. So I love that you've walked that path, right? You're not just saying, hey, do this. You're saying, do this because it works. I know, I've been there. And
Totally.
I
Yes.
think it's amazing.
Yeah, how
Yeah,
much
you know
more
what?
willing are we to listen, right? When there's an adult in our lives, right? As young people, when we are young people, hey, I've actually been where you are. I'm not just like this person who grew up with this picture perfect life and I'm just on the outside telling you how to do it. So that's huge. It gives you a little bit of clout, I feel like, with the young people.
Oh, thank you. And you know what? One of the things is that I talk about with my students that I'm currently working with is I'm always just so open and honest with them. I went to school to be a teacher. I obviously still am a teacher, but things can change. You're allowed to change your mind. Just because you choose one path doesn't mean it has to be that forever, or it can be that, but maybe it's just going to look different. And often I find that they are most surprised to find out that most adults also don't have it all figured out. We're all continuously on this journey, learning and growing all of the time. And I feel like that's the whole part of it. And there's just so much beauty in that if you can really learn to be more aware of it.
For sure. And I love that, right? Because I think we've all fallen victim to that at one point or another. We see our parents or aunts and uncles, grandparents man, they have it all figured out. What's wrong with me? Why can't I find what my thing is? Right. And you're so right. It's a continual learning process. And I think life is all about pivoting and seizing different opportunities that come your way. I mean, I started as a journalism major. I've never worked a day of journalism in my life, right? But that was the career and that was the degree that I got. So it's kind of funny how life just kind of takes you where you're meant to be. And something that you hit on when you were kind of telling us what you do is how easy it is to fall into that comparison game. And I feel like even as adults, it's hard for us. And so, how do you kind of advise your teenagers, hey, it's okay. You don't need to compare, just compare yourself, to you, not anybody else. What advice do you have for teens who are maybe stuck in that cycle of comparison?
Yeah, so this is where, and as I said, things can become very complex because I feel, as you said, even now in my mid 30s, this is still something that's very challenging for me. So to really try and put myself in their shoes and recognize how different it must be these days growing up as a teen, we didn't have nearly as close to the social media that they have. I mean, I remember having a BlackBerry with like the little ball that you would like scroll and all you could send was like text messages, right? There was no video, there was nothing like that. Um, so as I said, things are just so much more complex. But again, I believe that, we get to keep what we choose not to change. So I'm always telling them just like one of the things that I absolutely love to do is just to create a mind map and really to get them to open up and see the things in their life that actually do truly have meaning and value for them. Because when you actually put those things on paper and when you really look at it, sometimes and most often what I find is there's a lot of things on there that actually don't that they just don't fit or they're just not serving them anymore, right? So it's really about finding those things that truly bring you joy in your life and knowing that your worth is not in seeking approval or validation from others. It's truly coming back home to yourself and the things that again are a priority for you and that are going to help you feel the absolute best that you can.
Mm, that's awesome. Yeah, that's tough. Most of our teens right now are struggling with, right, just the nature of who we work with, mental health concerns, self-confidence, things like that. And technology and social media, I feel like has really played a big role in that. And it is sometimes difficult to relate because I don't love social media, so I don't find myself necessarily gravitating toward it, but I can see how it can become so consuming and then just continually playing that game of, well, it looks like this family, right? Or as a mom now, I'm not comparing myself to maybe other single women like I would have in the past, but now you're looking at families, right? As an adult, like, oh my gosh, they have the perfect kids and they're always going on these nice vacations and all these things. So if we as adults are doing it and we don't even necessarily have those strong tendencies toward social media like the younger group does, like, man, that's tough. Like to try to navigate that and figure that out is hard. I'm wondering, how do you involve parents throughout the coaching process? Or do you involve parents? Are you mainly working with the teens directly?
No, definitely. It's usually actually, or so far since I've started this one-on-one coaching, it has been the parents that are reaching out to me. So we actually work together. I always tell them that I become a support person, I become a part of their team. But, it's I'm providing the space and the accountability and everything that their teen needs to be able to grow and thrive, but I can't actually take those physical actions for them. So, we need to work together to co-create the life, the goals, the bigger visions that they have for themselves. They need a tribe around them essentially. And I mean, that is even what I've noticed to be true for me over these last 3, almost 4 years. None of what I just mentioned happened alone, right? I mean, I had to hire a therapist, I hired my own coach, and I have people that hold me accountable to the things in my life that I want to achieve for myself. Because I truly believe that, especially when you're in that state of not believing in yourself, for somebody else to see and believe in you and to see your potential before you even can will help you to see and believe it too. So definitely just being a part of a team has had an incredible impact on so many of the students that I have worked with.
I love that. That's awesome. And that's that's kind of a philosophy we have at Mountain Point Academy too, is like, hey, let's help give these kids someone that believes in them and it can support them and hold them accountable for their academics, right? I mean, primarily we focus on academics, but we also are firm believers that if they can build confidence in their skills and who they are as a person, that's automatically going to cross over to their academics because they're going to feel like, hey, I can do this. I can do hard things. Or maybe I've been told I was stupid my whole life, or I've been kicked out of schools, or, whatever their journey is. It's like some of them have said, wow, this is the first time that a teacher has like invested in me and cares about what I'm doing. Like I feel like I have a team beside me. And that's really what it is, right? It's the village. It's teachers and parents and everybody just jumping on board to help that rising generation because I think, yeah, they're facing a lot of things that our generation just never had to deal with, right? I mean, I remember I got Facebook when I was like a senior in college, and that was like at the cusp of, Facebook becoming a thing. And I'm like, yeah, so I didn't have those teenage years of the constant bombardment, the constant comparison and feeling down. And something I read once that kind of stuck with me because, like Sarah said, even adults fall victim to this when you're in that mindset of, well, what is lacking in my life? Why don't I have everything everybody else has? It's so easy to fall into that trap. And basically what I had heard was that we're comparing, 100% of our lives to 10% of their lives because everybody's posting their best on social media. They're not sharing. I mean, I feel like it's shifting, right? Like I feel like I've seen a lot more raw, vulnerable, real life posts. But in the beginning, it was just all about, hey, look at how great my life is when behind the scenes they might have been falling apart, right? And so
Yep.
it's just easy to do that. And so with this coaching, is part of your like program, is it, do you tell parents, hey, let's get off social media, let's have a social media fast, or like what does that look like? What are some actionable steps that parents could take to help their teen feel a little more confident?
Oh, I love that you actually suggested that. No, that is actually not something that I've ever considered, but it definitely wouldn't be something I don't believe that would be off the table. I think that, if it's something that would benefit them, it's definitely worth trying. But essentially, what I do is when I do my connection calls with the families and with the teens, we actually discuss, because I do believe that this is also individual, right? The school system, what I started to recognize, and this is nothing against the system or the teachers, it's just this is why I feel like I don't fit very well within that box anymore, because that's exactly what it is. It feels like it's catering just to like one style of learning. And I believe honestly so deeply that, everybody is meant to learn the way that they are meant to learn. And so we discuss the main things that, main goals and the main needs and desires that they have for them. And then I kind of just co-create that and reverse engineer that with the parents. So each each student that I work with, I mean, it's always going to look different, but essentially some of the main things are really to look at their health and their habits. And that's not to say that you need to change everything overnight, but even something like just getting quality sleep can make such a huge difference in a teen's life. Trying to eat as nutritious as they possibly can on a regular basis and just getting in movement, even if that just looks like 10 minutes a day of walking. And what was some of the other things that I was thinking of? Oh, yes, water. Even just something as simple as, having more water in your day. And that's literally where I started my own personal journey, was just more water, more walking, more getting outside and more connecting with myself. Once you start to actually feel better, like your vessel starts to feel better, I feel like you're able to show up for those things in your life that you actually, yeah, need to set your mind to. And um, thoughts are a big part of the work that I do. So just being aware of your thoughts and some of the stories that you're telling yourself, some of the limiting beliefs that you may have that aren't even yours. And again, for a teen hearing this for the first time, sometimes it can be like, what? Because even for me, I didn't start to recognize into my 30s that, the thoughts that I was thinking weren't even necessarily true, but that as you're thinking these thoughts, your subconscious mind just, I mean, you believe everything that you think. It doesn't know the difference between what is true and what isn't. So I feel like just all of that, and then asking for help, finding yourself a community and somebody to hold you accountable, and actually physically put things on your calendar that are going to start to slowly, I'm talking like very small micro actions that are going to start to slowly just shift the trajectory of your life, can be incredibly powerful. And then we just also, like, I like to incorporate fun, because I feel like these days I hear so much teens and families, everybody just seems to be overwhelmed. Everybody just seems to be anxious. Everybody just seems to be burnt out. And I know that those are real things, but I just feel like we've lost like a love and a sense of play when it comes to learning. I feel like I'm constantly ruminating on this thought of how can we bring back more fun and more love to learning, because teens should not be feeling this way, or it doesn't need to always feel so heavy, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So whenever I connect with them, I'm always trying, no matter what their, their emotions are, their feelings are that day, just to let that be. Like, they know when they come to me, if they're in a bad mood, express that. Honestly, I would rather you be open and honest about the way you're feeling. But normally, I would say like 90% of the time by the end of our sessions, you can see that shift in them. Like, they're proud that they showed up for themselves, even if it was for, a chemistry test that we had to study for. And I mean, you don't have to love chemistry, but you can just love and appreciate yourself for the fact that you showed up to do something that maybe, challenges you and that you didn't want to do.
Mhm. Wow. That question is, how do we bring back fun to learning? And man, that's something that I feel like Angelia and I have wrestled with too, because it's like trying to find that balance between appeasing the needs of, or the requirements of the state and accreditation and stuff like that, right? To be an accredited school and to follow a certain set of standards, and yet also, you know, think outside of the box of how can we create learning opportunities, maybe that are either away from the computer or outside of the textbook, things like that. That's a tough thing, but I like that. I like that you're questioning that and thinking that. Just to your point, I feel like overall, not just teens, but like you said, families, everybody, things feel just very out of whack. Like there's no balance. It's just the pressures of life for teens. I'm sure you see it just a lot with the pressures of academics, right? We're a school, so that's something that's always on our mind. But how do you help teens balance that pressure that they're feeling academically in schools and trying to keep up with classmates and um traditional schools sometimes send students home with hours of homework, and then they might be in sports or theater or something else. And there's just so much that it never feels like there's just room to breathe or just be. How do you navigate that with teens?
Yeah, so I think first, to that point, it's just so important to let them know and to make sure that they recognize, because again, this is not something you're aware of unless somebody actually guides you and teaches you this. And I feel like there are a lot of teachers that don't teach this because we were never taught to teach this. So it's got nothing to do with the teachers. It's just we need to change the narrative around this, that all of the things, all of the to-dos and all of the shoulds do not define your worth. So that to me is first and foremost. But again, there are things obviously that do need to get done in order to get to a certain place. So I feel like the most important thing is just to help them recognize, how much time they have, to actually have them physically look at their calendar. And even if we just like write out like for one day, for 2 days, 3 days, even as much as like a week, like what are you doing on a daily basis? How much time are you spending? And here is where we could talk about, the scrolling, because even at 35 years old, I still find myself scrolling, and then I'll be like, oh, I didn't get this, that, and the other thing done today. And I'm like, well, you have an awareness now. So what are the reasons why? Because if you really say you don't have 20 or 30 minutes to do this, that, or the other thing, you might need to check on the why. And oftentimes, that there are moments in our day where, if we changed our habits even just slightly, we would start to notice that we have more time to complete the things that we need to get done. So I guess that's where I come in. It's holding them accountable, right? And it's helping them to put those things on their calendar and stick to them, and not, kind of almost like, you know, if you go bowling and you have to have like the bumpers on the lanes. So I'm just kind of keeping them like within within the lanes and trying to help them, you know, stay on task and stay focused on the things that they need to get done first. And then they can do the other things that really light them up and bring them a ton of joy.
What are some examples of those calendared items, just out of curiosity? Like, what are some things that are either on your calendar or maybe some of the teens that you're working with? You mentioned water
Yeah.
as
So,
one. Is that something you put on your calendar? Drink water?
well, definitely when you're first, I feel like when you're first starting out, like you don't want to, I just don't want to ever make them feel more overwhelmed or bombard them with a bunch of things, right? But yeah, essentially it's always, I always look at it as putting self on the calendar first. I truly feel that you need to fill up your own cup before you can pour from that cup and give more of yourself to others and to the things in your life that you need to do. So through working with my coach, Heather Chauvin, so I have to give her a shout out for this because we work energetic time management is essentially just a way to put the things on your calendar that are a priority. And again, as I said, I believe that self should always be first. And then for teens and adults, this is going to look different. But for teens especially, you know, you could have family on there, you can have friends, and you can have school and all the different things. And it's really about, and this is what helps so much with overwhelm, is just brain dumping all of the things, getting all of that out of your head. So even if I do the writing for them and they're just telling me like, oh, I've got to study for this test, but I also want to go to this friend's birthday, or I have to do, you just help them to brain dump all of that out to clear their mind. And then you start to focus on the things that absolutely need to get done and the things that maybe can get done at a later date or maybe aren't as important as maybe they thought they were, and just kind of trying to help them like communicate all of those things and their feelings around that too, because I feel for our teens what is so very essential is just to help them with, you know, expressing how they are feeling, having somebody to listen, being heard, seen and understood. I feel like is something that's really going to help them to cultivate that confidence as well.
For sure. Well, and I think in that process, that's where the self-awareness kicks in, right? As they practice this and they learn, oh, hey, I didn't do so great at water this week, or I scrolled too much on social media. They can start to kind of build that self-awareness and start to take those baby steps themselves, where maybe they don't need someone to continuously like hold their hand, right? And say, hey, this is what you need to work on. They can start to kind of develop those neural pathways in their brain of, oh, hey, I can do this on my own. And I think that in and of itself is a huge confidence boost, because then they can start to realize, oh, hey, I know where I need to improve. And it's not in a like negative way where they're getting down on themselves, right? Like I feel like there's this fine line between, oh, hey, recognizing a weakness and working to improve it versus like letting that become depression and you suck and going down that rabbit hole, right? Like it's that fine line. And so by fostering this attitude of self-awareness, it's also helping them recognize that like, hey, I'm not perfect and that's okay. I can get better, right? And so do you have, I would imagine, I feel, I mean, before social media, I was that type A perfectionist child, right? And I'm sure now with all the comparison that's out there in the world that we are in, and there's probably a lot of teenagers that might be suffering from this perfectionism agenda or the shoulds, like you said, right? Oh, I should be doing this and this and this and this, and I'm not keeping up. So how do you help them also kind of get out of that perfectionist headspace so that they can just recognize the growth that they are experiencing?
Yeah, I love that. You know, what comes to mind is just that I'm constantly reminding them that consistency is so key in order to change some of these patterns, but also that you need to look at it through a lens of progress and not perfection. There's, oh my goodness, there's this quote by Alex Hermosi, I believe is his name. I could be completely butchering that right now, but um, it's something along the lines of is you don't become confident by just, you know, saying the things that you want to change about yourself, but it's by having like a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. And just by starting to stack up little by little those new habits that you're putting into your calendar and that you're, you know, creating in your life, that's where the confidence is really going to come in. And I don't even know if that answered your question, but that was the first thing that came to mind for perfection. And honestly, it's more just about too, especially since I created this podcast over a year ago. Like I encourage them to go back and to listen. At the beginning of this podcast, or sorry, my podcast, The Confident Teen, I talk about my own personal story, my own personal struggles. And before it became Confident Teen, it was actually called The Imperfect Creatrix, where I had a ton, probably over 50 guests come on and share their essentially like breakdown to breakthroughs. So just helping them to recognize and sharing stories with them about other people that have had those same struggles with perfectionism, but have, come out on the other side and how they have done that. And I feel like just sharing our stories and being vulnerable with one another. And when you can really start to relate to somebody else, yeah, that's where a lot of the magic happens.
For sure. I think that's so crucial, right? I think there's been a big shift in society lately of, we used to have this mentality of, oh, just suck it up, you'll be fine, things will work out, don't express your emotions, don't feel the things. And now it's shifting to, no, it's okay. Like we're all more alike than we are different. We're all humans experiencing struggles and difficulties and challenges. And if we can share our story and be real and vulnerable with one another, then that's where, like you said, the magic happens, because then a teen listening can be like, oh, hey, I'm normal. It's okay that I'm feeling these things, or it's okay that I'm having this mental health crisis, because other people have as well. And they
Yeah.
don't feel so alone, right? I think we were siloed and isolated before, whereas now there's this awareness of, no, mental health needs to be a priority, because you have one brain, you have one body, right? You have to treat it like you would a broken leg or, diabetes. Like you take care of those things. And so I
Yeah.
love that this shift is happening and that there's coaches out there, especially focusing on the teen realm, because those are when those, critical skills are being developed to then just help them be successful later in life. So I love what you're doing,
I would just
Kristi. I
like,
think it's awesome.
oh, thank you. Yeah. And I just want to touch on that really quickly. Like, just to say, too, again, this is still something that is, to me, so very complex, but I also know that it is so very needed. So I feel like it's just so important for parents and teens to recognize that we are all navigating this together. Um, and I by no means, I mean, I'm passionate about the work that I do, but I by no means consider myself like an expert. I just know that I'm passionate, and I know that this has started to grow organically for me for the last few years, and that I'm starting to see success because, again, it's all about, working together just to help our teens feel better. And that's just, that's at the foundation of everything. So yeah, I just wanted to add that as well.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Like nobody expects you to be the know-it-all that has all the answers. I
Yeah.
think such a big part of it, and we talk about it a lot, but it's just building positive relationships is such a key part. Doesn't necessarily matter so much like how much of an expert you are, but if you're there alongside a teen and a family and you can share some of the knowledge that you've gained through your own experiences and just be there and be that positive support player in their lives, sometimes that alone makes such a big difference. Not to mention, you might not think you're an expert, but you have so much experience, right? You're bringing a lot to the table too, but that's even just small part of it, right? Relationship building is key, especially when it comes to confidence, building confidence, self-confidence. If other people believe in you, it's easier to believe in yourself.
Yeah. And I love telling my students as well, one day, like this could be you. You start to make these changes for yourself. You start to habit stack and you start to see changes. One day you might find yourself in my position and, just knowing like full body, full heart, full soul that you want to help other people because of, some of the challenges that you have overcome. So it's literally just a ripple effect and it's so very powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Awesome. Well, we could probably talk about this forever, Kristi, but where, a lot of our listeners are parents of students who maybe are struggling in academics, maybe struggling with confidence or mental health or even, substance issues. And so where can parents find you if they want to use your resources and get help for their children?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am most active on Instagram. You can find me at Confident Teen Teacher. You can also find me at Confident Teen Podcast, and my podcast is available on Apple and on Spotify. In the last year, I also I co-authored in a book called Body Bliss, The Journey to Body Acceptance. So especially for teens that are looking for, those vulnerable, raw and real stories, mine included, about finding body confidence. And if you check out, I believe you'll have all of this in the show notes, but I do have a landing page too with a free resource for 10 ways to help your teen cultivate and build that confidence as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely add those to the show notes. So parents listening, be sure to check out these free resources for your teen to just, have extra support to help them build that confidence and help them cultivate the skills that they need. Thank you so much, Kristi. This was a great conversation and we really appreciate having you on today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.